Okay, for our next set of notes, we're going to be in page 2-4 of our Unit 2 notebook. We're talking about ratios. We're going to fill in the definition for ratio. A ratio is a comparison of two values. And given quantity A and quantity B, the ratio of A to B can be written in three ways, and we're going to go over those three ways. One way is using a semicolon between A and B, so that means the ratio of A to B. The other is to actually use the word to, A to B, and the other way is to write A over B as a fraction. And like fractions, ratios should always be written in simplest form, and that was what we just reviewed. So the next bunch of problems ask us to write each ratio in simplest form in two different ways. So the ratio is already written with the form of A to B with the word to. So we're going to write it as a fraction, and we're going to write it with the semicolon. And we need to make sure we write it in simplest form. So let's write it as a fraction and simplify it first. So 8 DVDs to 2 books. What's the greatest common factor of those two numbers? It's 2. I'm going to divide top and bottom by 2. And I'm going to get 4 over 1. So there's the ratio, and then I'm going to write it the second way with a colon. For number 2, 15 girls to 24 boys. The greatest common factor for each of these numbers is 3. So my ratio simplified is going to be 5 over 8, or 5 colon 8. 20 flounder to 8 bluefish. The greatest common factor for each of those numbers is 4. I'm going to get 5 over 2 as my simplified ratio, and I'm going to write 5 colon 2 as my other form of writing the ratio. 6 chaperones to 42 students. My greatest common factor is going to be 6 for both of these. I'm going to get 1 over 7 as my simplified ratio, or 1 chaperone to 7 students. 36 bananas to 27 apples. The greatest common factor of both these numbers is 9. So when I divide 9 by top and bottom, I get 4 over 3. So this ratio simplified is 4 to 3. 8 Skittles to 14 M&Ms. The greatest common factor of these two numbers is 2. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. 14 divided by 2 is 7. The other way to write it is 4 colon 7. 30 quarters to 72 nickels. The greatest common factor for each of these numbers is 6. I get 5 over 12. 5 colon 12 is the other way to write it. And then 24 kayaks to 40 paddle boards. The greatest common factor of these numbers is 8. So I get 3 over 5, or 3 to 5. So there's a bunch of ratios and simplified. Number 9, this past season, the hockey team had 48 wins and 28 losses. Find each ratio in simplest form. So what are they asking us to find? So wins to losses. Well, I know the wins is 48. And I know the losses is 28. So I can write it like that. Or I can write it like this. What is the greatest common factor of 48 and 28? It's 4. So the wins to loss ratio is 12 to 7, or 12 to 7. And then the other ratio for part B is losses, which I know is 28, to total games. Well, what's the total games? They don't tell me, but I know if they won 48 games and they lost 28, that means that they played 76 games. So 28 to 76 is going to be my ratio. And when I simplify that, it's going to have a common factor of 4. 28 divided by 4 is 7. 76 divided by 4 is 19. And I can also write it as 7 to 19. And then number 10, given the word Massachusetts, Find each ratio in simplest form. Vowels to consonants. Well, let's look at our word. Vowels. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 vowels. So I'm going to write 4 consonants. Everything else is a consonant, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 4 to 9. I do not have a common factor for either of those numbers. It's in simplest form, so 4 to 9. The second one, they're asking me to find S's to total letters. So let's look at how many S's I have. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 S's in this word. And then total letters. Well, in my one before, if there were 4 vowels and 9 consonants, that means I have 13 total letters. So this ratio is going to be 4 to 13, and there are no common factors for those two numbers, so that ratio is in its simplest form.